Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. I see our session has started. We'll give it a minute and make sure everybody's getting in nice and comfortable, audio working okay. I know all of these technology platforms can be quite the experience. So, welcome once again. We're so happy you chose to join our panel today. My name is Danielle Haro. I'm a program development specialist for the USO. I am also a former military spouse. It sounds strange to say that. Maybe the right terminology is veteran spouse. Someone can help me out. But yes, proud to have supported my husband in his service in the Army. My brother is currently active duty, so lots of love and support to him, and just my, as always, heartfelt gratitude to anyone who's joining us in our military community. Thank you for your service and sacrifices. So, with that, we've got some good stuff today. So, again, thanks for joining our panel. This one in particular is to talk about military spouse recruiting. Military spouses, just so important. I think we can all agree on that. So thank you for joining us to chat. I'm so excited for you to hear from our panelists today. They're both amazing. They have some great insights and stories to share. And so just quickly, before we get into the good stuff, I just wanted to share some context for today's conversation. And I'm not sure if anybody has dove into this or seen any of the statistics, but recently I was reading a Deloitte article from last year, from 2020. And I know what we all think of when we hear 2020, but what really jumped out at me was the article was addressing mil-spouse unemployment. And even before the pandemic don't say that, before the pandemic last year, the national average was 7 times higher for military spouses. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. And so, I wanted to share that as we go into today's conversation. Today, we're going to be talking with Jason Boone. He is the Enterprise Talent Sourcing Leader at Jacobs. And then also Nicole Utt. She is a Content Manager at Sandboxx. And so they've got a lot to share with you today. And let's get right into it. So Jason, I want to hear from you. Where does your passion to support military spouses come from? So tell us more about you.
Absolutely, Danielle. Thanks for having us, and it's great to be on the panel and for everybody to be joining. So I look forward to it. And I often talk to people. I say, I'm not necessarily who everybody would expect to see on a military spouse panel, and it's not for any of the obvious reasons. We do know that data shows us that 92% of military spouses are women. So I could have been that other military spouse, but I'm not. I was never married to a military individual. When I served in the military, I was not married. So my veteran time, I had no military spouse. But what really brings me to this panel and what is so important to me is my favorite military spouse. And that was, I grew up in a military family. So my dad was a career Army communicator, and my mom is that absolutely favorite military spouse. And why it's so important is I didn't realize it at the time when we were growing up, but when we moved every 18 months to 2 years with the Army, I realized that all she was able to do was work part-time retail jobs at the best, and not able to develop a career in her skill set and to leverage the kindness and the customer service mentality that she had into a career. And not only did it affect it during her time, and my dad retired when I was in high school, and so we settled in one place outside St. Louis, but then she didn't have a career. She didn't have those skills, and it was very difficult for her to find anything. And it affected the rest of her professional life, and it was always a struggle. And so for me, it became very much, how can I spend my professional career putting towards the military spouse community and assisting them and growing them. I've spent my entire 23 years in recruiting. Almost that entire time is in veteran recruiting. My dad was a military member. He was a recruiter in the Army, so you could say recruiting runs in the family. And my son is interviewing for recruiting jobs coming out of college. But then, very importantly, at Jacobs, I was to and that team includes Shelby Alavecchios, who's here as well. And we are growing our military community recruiting, and very specifically our military spouse recruiting. We have very aggressive goals to grow Jacobs' total female headcount to 40% by 2026. And the military spouse community is a big component of that. So that's my role in the background. And I simply say, every time I can help a military spouse with their career, it's my way to pay forward to my mom for her sacrifice.
I love that. And, hearing your story and your mom's story, really, just it reminds me of what we hear from so many military spouses at the USO, right? So thank you so much for sharing a piece of that. And I think you touched on something, which is, every mil spouse has a unique journey. Every family is different, and every, military story pans out differently. So Nicole, let's hear your journey or share your story with us a bit. I know you are a military spouse, or tell us a little bit about where you're at now. Oh, Nicole, you are still on mute. Thanks everyone for your patience. We'll give it just a second. It might be a little sensitive to audio settings there, but Nicole will give you a minute.
I hope she's not missing it. And the blue bar all the way to the left with a microphone icon.
Oh no. Okay, we'll give you a second to troubleshoot that. I see some great stuff coming through the chat. So thank you guys so much. Thanks, Jason, for kicking it off with sharing a LinkedIn URL. It's great to connect with each other. Someone put a comment in, Christina. I would think having the option to work remotely and take that job with you would help with this. So just kind of a broad observation about military spouse employment. So any thoughts that come to mind with that sort of question or point she's making, Jason?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that military spouse, answer that, and it looks like Nicole's back, but one of the things we found is if we can help identify the jobs that we believe are, we can, Nicole.
Yeah,
can you hear us, Nicole?
You. Oh, good. Okay.
Awesome. Well, Jason was just touching on something in the chat, and then we'll pivot to you and your story.
So just saying that we're really focusing on identifying the jobs that are...
So I'm super excited to be here.
Go ahead.
And, is Jason still talking?
I'm guessing, go ahead, Nicole. I'm guessing you don't have two-sided audio.
No worries, Nicole. If you could hear us, give us a thumbs up. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead, Nicole. I think there's just a delay. We'll pick it up later.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go for it. Tell us your story. We're dying with anticipation now.
I work at a tech company, but you would have no idea by the amount of problems I always seem to have. So sorry about that. Super excited to be here. I have what I consider to be a fairly unique story, but I think most military spouses do. And it's, part of the military spouse DNA. But my husband joined the Marine Corps 4.5 years ago. And at the time I was living in Colorado and he was out in Virginia at officer candidate school. So I knew eventually I wanted to be out on the East Coast and searching for a job and just per usual, having such a difficult time, especially having no network on the East Coast. I was from Colorado and grew up there, so really no connections at all in the Virginia, DC area. And I frantically started just networking, honestly, with a lot of military spouses and asking, where are you working? Or do you have a job? Or how did you get a job? And just really leveraging LinkedIn to kind of slowly start building that network. And ironically enough, when he was at OCS, I used this app called Sandboxx. And it's a digital app, and it allows you to send and write letters to your loved one at basic training or officer candidate school from your phone. And so I had used that, and I thought, well, I'm just going to reach out and ask them if they have any positions available. So I did, and they had an internship at the time and said, well, do you want to intern from Colorado? And I said, well, sure. Yeah, I'll just get my foot in the door. So I did. And after interning with them for about 4 months, they asked me if I would consider moving to Virginia, and I was very eagerly willing to accept. And so got in my car and moved to Virginia, and the rest is sort of history. But one thing that I think worked so well was I knew the product very well. So being able to bring my own customer experience into their company and marketing team specifically, I think gave me a really big advantage and is so important for companies to realize, military spouses are customers. They know customers very well because they are. So what better way to sort of have your customer become a part of your team? So I am just very fortunate enough that Sandboxx was willing to take me on, and it's been great the last 4 years. And so that really helped me throughout the rest of my husband's military career. I'm so passionate about military spouses really having their own mission aside from just supporting their loved one. I think that when they have the ability to have their own mission or goal and focus, they actually are way more capable of supporting their service member or loved one. So I'm just so happy to be here and to be talking about this topic.
Hearing your story. Way to go, Sandboxx. Talk about a good one that you got there. And you shared such awesome insights, and I love the, recruiting from your customer base sort of thing. You're so right. I mean, military spouses are everywhere and they have so much to bring to the table. But I love that you also lifted up how you leveraged and built a network and just sort of that community of support. So, Jason, you've got a lot of years of experience in your role. Tell us from your experience, what methods work well for employers who want to be a part of that, supportive network and play an active role in, being there for military spouses?
Absolutely. So I appreciate it, and I'm gonna start by answering the question that was in the chat, just so
Sure.
because that's a really great piece of it. So as people often talk about remote opportunities, and I'm gonna share my term one day. I'll trademark this, but I call it PCSable careers. So anybody not in the military is like, what is he talking about? But all of us that are in the military community know what a PCS is, and if I can find a career or help you get to a career that is PCSable, that's ideal. And I'm going to use the example with Shelby, who, like I mentioned, is on our team, is a military spouse. Just recently found out that her captain promotable husband is going to be relocating, and her role is 100% remote, and she's going to take that with us. She's new to our team, and she's going to go wherever the Army takes Tyler, and it's going to be a great opportunity. So that PCSable career is if you can identify. So as a company, don't necessarily put it on the potential employee. If you can identify the roles that are ideal for military spouses, so particularly remote, or those that are in high concentrations of military spouse areas, and then bring those to the forefront and promote them to the military spouse community and partner with organizations to get those PCSable careers in front of the right population, and in many ways even reserve them for that community. Say, hey, we're going to hold out these 3 positions that are for that community. That's how you can really make a difference in focusing on filling those. So aside from that, answering the question about remote roles, 3 areas that I want to touch on briefly about the military spouse and what has really been successful in my career in the companies I've worked with. And I've been lucky to work for organizations that really embrace military spouse hiring in the military community. Jacobs is certainly high on the list of that, as much of our mission relates to the military itself. So the first of those is employee resource groups, or at Jacobs, we call them Jacobs Employee Networks. Some companies call them business resource groups. Well, everybody's like, yeah, Jason, we know that. We've got a military resource group. We've got a veteran resource group. That's easy, and everybody does that. But I want you to take that a little bit further. And most everything I'm going to say, pull the thread of the obvious a little deeper. And do you have an affinity group or a subgroup or a committee for the military spouse population within your veteran employee resource group? It's that piece where you can actually separate, hey, this is a unique population that has a unique set of needs, and we want to cater towards that population. One of the best things we find is the mentoring that happens with existing military spouses and new military spouses. And when you have a committee, or I like the term an affinity group, as part of your veteran employee resource group, and you can have a military spouse chair that can work with mentoring and bringing those new military spouses in, and with internal mobility. You've got them here, you've got a job, you're PCSing, maybe it's not a remote job. How can you work with your employee resource group to ensure that you have internal mobility so you don't lose that military spouse as they relocate around the country? So leveraging your employee resource group specifically for military spouses, huge for us. The next one.
I just have to jump in. I'm so sorry. Christina, whichever organization you're with, Christina was already sharing in the chat that her company, they offer military spouses admin leave that isn't charged against their annual vacation time whenever they have to PCS. And we've got a little bit of a chat going on of what's PCS, permanent change of station. It's when they have to relocate. So thank you for sharing that, Christina. Shout out to you and your organization for that's such a great way to support mil spouses. So just wanted you to know that from the chat, Jason.
Thank you, Danielle. I really, and I love to hear unique benefits like that. It's an interesting one. And I've heard some companies, I've been with companies where they have a bank where individuals, rather than lose their time or buy out their time, they can donate PTO time, and then individuals can apply for it. And I've seen a lot of that for illness. But now it's got me curious to explore, can we have military spouses that are relocating as part of that bank of time? So a great share in there. So the next one that I think about is the fellowship programs, and very specifically the Hiring Our Heroes Military Spouse Fellowship. So they're a great partner of mine. The last two companies I've worked with, they're an organization I think does wonderful things. They're a nonprofit part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And almost everybody's heard of the Hiring Our Heroes Corporate Fellowship Program, but not everybody's heard of their Military Spouse Fellowship Program. And a couple things that I love about it is that the military spouse is paid during the fellowship program. So they have some very generous sponsors that have provided those funds. So I can bring on a military spouse, not have a direct immediate impact to my own budget. So maybe sometimes I have an employer that says, hey, I don't know that I can ramp up the training for a military spouse and have funds for that. Well, Hiring Our Heroes has the funds to pay that military spouse during that 6-week fellowship. And ideally, what you're having an opportunity to do is to see in the first 2 or 3 weeks, hey, is this person a great member of our team? And usually it's going to be yes, great work ethic, very adaptable, and a connection to your mission. And then you've got 3 weeks to work on transitioning them onto a full-time employee, making sure that the position is in order, their drug and background checks are all done, all those things, and you're training them while you're not having that direct labor impact to your organization, and then bringing on the military spouse. They have that at multiple locations around the country, and I know they look to grow that, and they even have a Salesforce specific one, so some very specific technologies. But I can tell you, it's an organization that is growing. They have a great mission. There's no cost to you as an employer to participate in the program. I think that's really important for me, is there's a lot of organizations that have fellowship programs. You have to pay for the fellowship program, or you pay for the identification. There's certainly opportunities to sponsor Hiring Our Heroes, but there's not a direct cost to participate. The last piece, and this I save it last because it's the most exciting thing that I've done. I got to participate in a little bit in my last employer, and I'm loving that we have leadership buy-in to expand it at Jacobs. And so the loose term is called a returnship, and it's a relatively new term that you're seeing in a couple of companies. And I'm going to give a shout out to Wells Fargo. They're doing a fantastic job with this for military spouses. But the idea of a returnship is simply this. We're going to create a cohort style, so a group of individuals all starting together that are going to partner together and fill a group of positions that you're going to ramp up their skills. And specifically, what's making it a returnship is you're identifying individuals who have been out of the corporate workforce for 2+ years. And that's the criteria I've seen. I've seen other companies define it different ways. I will say it's really important to use that term, out of the corporate workforce, because these are certainly individuals that it's not that they haven't been working. They've been working really hard, taking care of families, often volunteering as a key spouse and with the family communities, but they've been out of the corporate workforce for a couple of years, and they often have degrees. 38% of military spouses have an advanced degree. So these are highly qualified, highly trained individuals. They've just been out of corporate work for a couple of years, and now you have an opportunity to bring them in. And I encourage you to set up a fall and a spring cohort so you're not interfering with your college internship program. Bring them in for 12, 14 weeks. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 16. Find out what's right for your organization. Let them partner together. Have a training day. Maybe it's a Friday, maybe it's a Wednesday afternoon, that they're not just doing their normal work, but they're learning about your corporate environment and your culture. Ingrain them into what makes your organization great. Teach them new skills, ramp them up, and then look for those individuals to convert on as full-time employees. So ideally have full-time roles for them to convert to. And you can just watch your organization grow these groups of individuals or cohorts every year, that you're tapping a population of individuals who great skills, great training, great connection to your mission, and they've just been out of the corporate workforce. And we all know 2-3 years out of corporate work makes it really hard to show that on a resume and a LinkedIn profile. Even if you're showing volunteer experience, it's still tough. And a returnship is a great way to find a new talent pool in a time that everybody's looking for a new talent pool. And we're tired of buying talent. So let's build a talent
I love that, Jason, and it really jumped out at me how you were also talking about education. I mean, what a phenomenal stat you shared, but when you hear it at first, you're like, wow, but then you're like, no, yes, that is correct.
It
Like
is
our male
correct.
spouses are, I mean, they're amazing. And I just was thinking too about, as you talk about re-entering the workforce, we hear that all the time with the USO. We've offered a lot of online workshops, surprise, right? This past year, a lot of stuff online now, but it's been such a fantastic way to build more of a community for our male spouses, right? And so I just wanted to mention, the USO also has, we're really fortunate to offer free professional certificates. So if you know a male spouse out there, point them to us, because that's another great thing, a great opportunity to help them be able to get what they need to get back into the workforce. But you guys, I continue to be so excited by this theme of networking, community, coming together. Jason, I love the suggestions that you shared, and just kind of building off of that, the networking. Nicole, you mentioned in your story how you used LinkedIn, how you built a network for yourself. And again, kudos, because, it's not easy to do what you did and just really go out there and go for it. So what other insights do you have, or what else can you share about, those strategies for building that professional network?
Yeah, I LinkedIn is definitely one of my favorite social media platforms. I think I'm on it daily, but I would just say for military spouses, for those that don't know, there's a free program where military spouses can have LinkedIn Premium for a year, and it's through MySeco. It's such a great opportunity to just take advantage of that, even if you're not specifically looking for a career, just the networking opportunities or the free courses and certificates that you can take to sort of keep your development and your career active. It's just such an incredible resource. But yeah, I really think networking and just reaching out to other military spouses. A lot of the times when you do a search in LinkedIn, you can type in military spouses and they'll have that. Some military spouses have it in their headline. So you can just reach out. I've had many people reach out to me. I've reached out to other military spouses just to see, how they're doing, what they do for career development, and just talking, just having genuine conversations around that. Additionally, once you sign up for this LinkedIn Premium, you're actually added to a group called for the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. They have a specific group on LinkedIn where everyone from who's signed up for that program can join the group and get access to companies that are hiring that are in that Military Spouse Employment Program. And companies can join that. It basically says, we are proud to actively recruit for military spouses. You get access to a great group of network of people who are so excited to work and just very dedicated to their career. So I think for employers looking to hire some amazing talent, that group and having access to those spouses is just such a little golden nugget to have. So if your company is not a part of that group yet, I highly recommend trying to sign up and join that as well.
Some great tips, and I don't know if everybody or anybody sat in and listened on the keynote, but what was the term that came out of it? Like, take advantage of the free. LinkedIn is a free, amazing platform and an opportunity. So thank you for lifting up those things. That was really awesome to hear, Nicole. Jason, your thoughts on LinkedIn?
And it's funny, I'm sitting here busily typing away on the chat and adding some things. So a couple things I added the link so everybody knows it's there to, and I think a couple people have, to where they can sign up through MySeco for the military spouse free. There was a great comment somebody made about a lot of military spouses are on Facebook and not on LinkedIn. And I know the USO is ushering them into there. One thing I'm going to encourage, and this is kind of out of the box, but I like out of the box recruiting, is are you promoting jobs that are great for military spouses on Facebook where military spouses exist? And if you're like, what is he talking about? Every military installation. So I lived outside Scott Air Force Base, Illinois for a long time. And there's a Facebook group for Scott Air Force Base families where people, before they ever get there, they're asking about schools and neighborhoods and grocery stores and what's there to do for families. And the military spouse community gets really engaged in these Facebook groups at military installations. Or are you sharing jobs there? Because a lot of times we're looking for a career opportunity as well. And if you're not going to where the military spouse is engaged, you're missing out. So yes, we want to bring them to LinkedIn. But if you're not going to where they are as well, you're kind of doing a disservice to that community. So I love LinkedIn and social media as a whole in many ways. And one of the things I like about it is if you get creative and you learn how to use it, you can really find unique populations of people to engage with. So we're going to try something a little bit fun. We talked about this, so it shouldn't be a problem at all. I'm going to screen share and show a little bit of a demo of a great way to connect with military spouses. So let's say I've got this one. This is ideally going to work. Okay, it looks like it's sharing. Anybody can say, yep, you're absolutely sharing. That would be great.
Yes, we see your browser.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to throw the term advocate, spouse advocate, military spouse advocate. That's not a title. That's something where somebody raised their hand and said, hey, I'm here and I want to help this population. Now, maybe somebody's got that as a rare title, but for the most part, it's not a title. It's somebody that raised their hand and said, I'm here to help. And what I also know is people that raise their hand and say they're an advocate when they're really open to connecting. They've said, I'm here to help this population. So how do you find them? And the other thing is they have really great things to share. So this is what I want to show you. So I'm going to show, and I wanted to screen share so you can see it really specifically. So you'll notice I have spouse advocate in quotes. So just that recruiter term, it's a Boolean term is what it's called. The quote says these have to be together, because if you leave out the quotes, you get everything but it has spouse and everybody that has advocate, but not necessarily a spouse advocate. And I could add military spouse advocate in there as well. And you could play around with that term, but I'm going to start with spouse advocate in quotes, all lowercase as well. Then right here, I'm going to choose the filter. And what you're going to notice right there, we have 225 results. And your results could be a little bit different based on the number of connections you have. But now I'm going to see these individuals. And here's the key. All of these people said they're a military spouse advocate. They raised their hand. And they said, if you notice right here, Rebecca, the military spouse advocate, and it's right, often it's in their headline. That's the first place LinkedIn is looking for this, is in their headline. And we see it so many times. When we scroll through this, we're like, wow, look at all these great people who raised their hand and said, I'm here to advocate for military spouses. So you're like, okay, what do I do with that? Well, there's a couple things. Is one, you can seek those people out in a couple ways. One, if you connect with them, you're going to see their content, and they share great content. They share jobs for military spouses, resources, groups, events, functions. They share really great content. And even if they don't connect, and here's a great example with friends, you can follow them. So even if they're not able to connect with you on LinkedIn, you can follow and you still see the really original content that they're going to share. The other piece is that you can look for this by location. So, and I like to do things kind of spur of the moment. So I'm going to add a location here. And let's just say anybody in Texas, in DC, I'm going to just choose DC so it's 1. And I'm going to show the results. And say I have 31. I love doing things live because I don't know what I'm going to get. It could have been 0, and ideally this population would give me a little bit of grace for trying. So let's say you're a military spouse and your spouse is relocating to the Pentagon, and you want to start building your network in the DC area. So now I can say, hey, these are spouse advocates in DC. There's 31 of them, and I can connect with them individually. And I can even say, hey, I'm relocating to DC, and I'd love to join your network, and I appreciate that you've identified as a spouse advocate. It's just a great way to grow your network and really expand and connect with people that want to share meaningful content to you. So I appreciate you allowing me to share. I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully that's a tip that's beneficial to a lot of individuals.
There's nothing like seeing it live, demo in action. So thank you so much, Jason. You're getting a lot of responses in the chat as well. This is some great tips and great things to think about. And so this is a great opportunity to sort of give us all like a call to action here. Like, could you be one of those people on LinkedIn who now, uses that in their headline and is putting that hand out? I like how you said that, Jason, who's raised their hand or is extending their hand to support our military spouses. Is that you? Is this something you could do on your LinkedIn profile? Like, I don't know. Just some food for thought there, folks. And hopefully people were following along in LinkedIn. And the last thing I'll add on there is If you didn't know, the USO has a phenomenal opportunity for you to become a mentor for military spouses. So please, reach out, let me know if that's something that's of interest to you. Again, it's just so powerful to leverage each other and build a network of support and really help lift up our military spouses so that they are no longer facing 7 times the national average for unemployment. I mean, together we can change that. And that is just that's just the it never ceases to leave an impression on me thinking about that. Like, wow, 7 times is huge. I mean, double is huge, but 7 times, everyone. Let's not forget that. So hopefully that kind of sparks your passion to go into LinkedIn and kind of share what you have to give to military spouses. Jason, Nicole, such phenomenal tips you all shared for our companies and organizations here today. Certainly hope that they've been helpful for you so that you can go back to your teams and find these ways to incorporate strategies into your practices and hopefully be successful in recruiting more and more military spouses, because we all know how amazing they are. So I'm not seeing any more questions come in the chat, but I'll give you each the last word. So Jason, anything else you would like to share with our amazing audience today?
Sure. So I wanted to think of one more tip when I saw we had a couple more minutes, and that's going to be a two-part. So it's related to how you can give back to the military spouse population. So one is to volunteer to assist them. So if you're at a military installation and you're really strong with networking or LinkedIn or your job search or resume writing, go to the support center. So the Air Force calls them the Airman and Family Readiness Center, the SFL TAP office, and connect with the office and volunteer. I'd like to come in and give a LinkedIn workshop. It's something I love doing at Scott Air Force Base, and I've traveled to Fort Drum and MacDill to do it. So volunteer to give back. Take your skills and give back to that population. And then the other thing I'm going to ask to share with that population when they do is just a couple things. And that is one, if you haven't been in the corporate workforce and you've been volunteering, which most of our military spouses are volunteering, feel free to list that volunteering in the experience section of your LinkedIn. I know there's a volunteer section, but when you're looking to transition back to corporate, go ahead and list that volunteer work in the experience section so you have that experience. And the other thing, this is just maybe I just preach it all the time, but especially for those that are transitioning to the workforce, tailor your resume to every job. I'm speaking to so many people that know this. Every single job you apply for, when somebody tells, hey, I applied to 40 jobs today, no, you didn't do anything. You clicked 40 times on a button that probably accomplished nothing, because I know you didn't tailor your job or your resume to all 40 of those jobs. I want you to customize the job description, what the company says they're looking for. Make sure it's highlighted in your resume exactly the way they do that. So the tip for this population, because it is, make sure you're giving that advice to the military spouse. Tailor your resume to every job that you're applying to so that the company can see exactly what you do as it relates to what they're asking for. So just a couple tips. I hope it helps. I definitely look forward to everybody connecting on LinkedIn. And Danielle, thank you for the opportunity to join and great facilitation. Nicole, it was wonderful to meet you. I love what Sandboxx is doing. I've been telling people about it all week. What a great organization.
Thank you so much, Jason. Likewise, it's been phenomenal. Nicole, any last words from you or anything else you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I just want to quickly share for any military spouses that are on, when you're going into those interviews, I know so many friends always have struggled to tell their their future employer that they are a military spouse because they think it's so negative and won't get them the job. And I just really challenge all of you guys to actually own being a military spouse and really touch on all the things that, because you're a military spouse, would make you a great employee. Being resourceful, being able to, adjust to change very quickly, very dedicated, very passionate and driven. So all of those things are great reasons why any employer would want to hire you. So I think to sort of start changing that stigma that a military spouse might not be a great employee, we all have to start sort of really owning that, yes, I'm an incredible worker and I would be such an asset to your team. So that's just my last little spiel. And then also, a little plug for Sandboxx. We are hiring so many remote jobs. So if anyone is currently looking, we are hiring across multiple teams and departments. So you can learn more about all of those positions on our website, and I'll post a link down below for anyone that's interested, or please share if you know anyone that might be interested as well.
I love that. Yes, let's all do our part to change that stigma. And as you were sharing that, Alex said in the chat, mill spouses are not flight risks. Yes, I love it. Let's embrace this mentality and help others to do the same. So what a great note to end on. I'm just going to call out the chat. We've shared such amazing things in there. So if you haven't, just take a minute to scroll through. You don't want to miss out on anything that anyone has shared here today. But thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on the panel. Jason, Nicole, you all are amazing. Thank you so much for what you're doing for our military spouses, and the same to our audience. Thank you so much for the support and being an advocate for them in whatever way that means.
Thank you, Danielle. You did such a great job moderating. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Nicole. What a fantastic panel. What I'm hoping for in these panels is that they're filled with, concrete, actionable advice. And there was just such a wealth of that throughout this panel. You all did a tremendous job. I hope the attendees found it as useful and engaging as I did. Thought this was a phenomenal panel. Thank you all so much. So our next panel is actually our second round of breakouts. This is Breakout 2. You'll be able to find it on the probably the same tab that you guys are on now, Breakout Sessions. Just scroll down. You have two choices of breakouts to choose from. One is Breakout 2, Option 1, improving identification and tracking of your veteran employees. The other is Breakout 2, Option 2, finding and contracting with veteran-owned suppliers and vendors. That will start in just a few minutes from now. Actually, won't kick off until 1:25, about 8 minutes from now. So you guys have time to get up, stretch, get a glass of water, take it easy, and then hope to see you at one of the two breakouts a few minutes from now. Thanks again to our phenomenal panelists, and continuing to have a great conference today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, George.